Hi, I'm Sean Drotar. Welcome to Mile High Sports. We are out at the Denver Broncos training camp. Of course, the first week has concluded as this comes and goes so quickly at times. It feels like it goes so fast. And we have an opportunity to talk to Cynthia Frelund of the NFL Network. Thanks so much. Hosted NFL Game Day Live, NFL Fantasy Live, and
Broncos sideline preseason reporter.
Right.
This is a really big part of my byline that I need to point out.
Fellow math nerd.
Fellow
math very much appreciate because I really did want to start with that because your path to this world has been fascinating, but to me it feels in an odd sort of way predictable because for the NFL, for sports in general, the approach of first was analytics and now we're using AI and all this sort of stuff to process it, but people are realizing all these techniques, there's so much video, there's so much everything. You win on the margins in the NFL. You win on the margins. And so every time you can find a little bit of an edge, that's what people use. So the fact that there has been a rise of people being able to come into this and be difference makers at this level does not surprise me. But when you started to get into this business, it was still an idea that it was analytics or scouting, which is not the way to approach it, but that's where people started.
Right. And it was also like money. What is Moneyball for football?
Right.
A lot of people were familiar with the Brad Pitt movie. I don't even know if they read the Michael Lewis book. They probably saw the movie.
Right.
But ultimately they're like, what are we doing here? Like, how are we finding lower priced players? Well, you have to remember in baseball, it's just a wholly different dynamic and completely different. And I was always telling people, listen, you want to be, it's not sexy to say incremental. People want something disruptive, radical change right now, but to be consistently like just 10% better, incrementally better. If you're 10% better across 17 games, do you know how many more games you're winning? It's like 2. So that's huge. Think about the difference between 2 games, right? 9 games or 11 games in the
season. For the
Denver
Broncos, that's maybe competing for the AFC West this year if they get 2 games better. Right.
Correct. And for many divisions, that is the case, right? Maybe not some of them, but many of them. But ultimately, when you're looking at those opportunities, what you're doing is it's not the star players and it's not the not so good players. It's the guys in the middle. And how do you distinguish between all of these guys are the best of the best. Let's just start off with that. But now you're saying in my system, I want you to do X, Y, and Z. Well, you have these attributes that select well for X, Y, and Z. It minimizes problem A, B, and C over here, right? So you're selecting for the traits you want, given that you have a coach, and the Broncos have a coach who can articulate what they want.
Right.
And now, instead of sifting through game film and watching everything with the cowboy clicker and getting tired, now you can focus in and zone in on just hone in on just like, what are the traits that I'm looking for? I only want to see when you're using a false leverage. Maybe you figured out for a corner, right? Like, I only want to see how they do I don't actually care about when they play like this because we're not going to do that, right? So ultimately what you're doing is you're segmenting. There's so much data and there's so many different ways to look at that data. You're segmenting it into something more digestible so you can actually make a decision. Doesn't mean your decision's going to be right. It just gives you a better opportunity to have a smaller data set with which to make a better decision.
Yeah, I think that the word you use, digestible, is the part that's so important because obviously there's a lot of numbers, there's a lot of things, and it can be difficult at times to separate the signal from the noise, right?
Oh,
because data can be very noisy.
Yes.
And there's a lot of it that you can see and you think that maybe it leads to something else and you can go down the wrong road and end up with very, very problematic conclusions.
You want to know one thing I've been looking at this summer? I don't know if this is good or bad. Well, we'll see how it goes, right? I've been looking at legs. So you can measure with computer vision now. You can look at like how long my femur is versus how long my, your shin is, for example, how thick your knee is, your quad, etc. And it appears as though there are some characteristics of legs that project better for certain routes for wide receivers.
Sure.
And I mean, Cortland
Which makes sense. This is all
seems like logical.
It's biomechanics. You're applying force from a different. You go back to your high school physics classes.
Yeah.
These things do matter, right?
These things do matter. And it's also consistency over season. So Cortland Sutton, so interesting. Why is he so good in the red area? Probably has something to do with his leg. Doesn't sound so like that sounds super logical when you say it. Now use that kind of prototype and look at the guys coming out next. Now who's going to be also good at that.
Right.
How do you get
who are the Broncos picking?
Right.
Devon Troy Franklin, Pat Bryant.
I would even argue that Evan Ingram has a similar.
Evan Ingram has a very similar body style to Cortland
exactly.
Sutton.
So what you're saying is Sean Payton has a type.
Yeah, it does.
And go get me that type.
That. Yep.
Right. Like go get me that. But that's good because if you articulate this is what I expect of someone, well, give me the legs that can do it.
Devon Vele becomes an instant starter last year, despite being a late round pick, and gets 500 yards receiving, and it feels like there's a lot of headroom there, even though he was an older prospect.
And he has the legs.
Yeah.
He's got them good legs.
And so when you can use that, it's obviously really valuable. And the Broncos use that a little bit. And some of it's the analytics part. And some of it is also understanding, like you talked about, what works in our system.
That's right.
And how do people be able to communicate?
Devon Vele wouldn't work in every system.
Right. When Bo Nix, and I think we don't have any questions about Bo Nix. We can talk more about him. I know you ranked him 8th among fantasy quarterbacks coming into this season.
Who's mad about that? Anyone? They better not be.
I think it sounds right when you talk about the run pass ability, but I look at it and think the same thing.
Your defense is too good for him to be any better. Just so we're clear,
Bo Nix on a third of the teams in the NFL. We're not talking about him the same way that we're talking about him here, because some of it is system. It is synergy with your coach. It is ability to speak the same language and function the same way approach-wise. And it's one of the reasons that Nix and Jaden Daniels were by far the two best rookie quarterbacks, even though Jaden Daniels was picked second and Bo Nix was the 6th quarterback to be selected, because the Broncos have invested this time and energy and understand, even if they're not using as much data as they could, but they at least understand the concepts behind it and how to correctly apply it to find a fit. Who cares about where anybody grades player X? That doesn't matter. How does player X work with what you're doing?
Right.
And not every player will fit. The dirty secret of the NFL draft is that where you go, not in the selection, but the team you end up with, the system you end up with, the coaches you end up with, probably is more impactful than anything else.
You know, a good example of a team doing it, maybe getting the wrong result. Look, it's not more data, it's better data and how you use it, right? Like more can just sometimes be more. It's not always helpful, right? Faster of the better stuff, that's the more you want, right? Yeah. But look at I'm thinking about the Buffalo Bills, and they drafted Kaiir Elam first, and he was a corner, and they drafted him first out of Florida a couple of seasons back. And they also drafted Christian Benford in the 6th round. And if you notice, Kaiir Elam is no longer on their team, and Christian Benford got paid. They did not throw bad money after good, going after, because sometimes those guys get, they try to, but he didn't fit their system.
And that's the mistake too. The gambler's fallacy the teams make. And one of the differences,
but
even in analytics, system. This matters when you're talking about managing the cap.
Oh my God,
the way you have to stack these contracts years out. So all of that's really, really fascinating. And it drives so much of things. I always tell people that when you're talking about sort of analytics, I'm like, it's driving what's happening to you, whether you think it is or not. So you might as well learn more about it, right?
Right. I mean, you can't choose. I argue, like, there's certain things, like, you have to at least know how AI is impacting your life. You just have to know. You can choose to reject it after you understand it, but you can't. I just don't think you should wholesale reject something that's a big enough thing without even understanding what it is. I mean, the amount of our phones are listening to us right now and going to serve us an ad for whatever it is we're going to talk about, mattresses, whatever it happens to be, because it's listening. So you are impacted by things that are computer derived, whether or not you want to. So why don't you be a human about it and be better than the machine, right?
Yeah, and use all the tools at your disposal.
That's right.
I've likened it to with some of the folks, especially the early years when people start about, I just want to use my eyes.
Get off my
lawn. But think about it. I've said this before, that if you're hiring it, you have a couple things around your house that just, you have this door that needs rehung.
Yep.
Yeah, this needs to be painted. You got to change out this and that, and you're going to hire a handyman or whatever. The handyman shows up and the toolbox has a hammer in it.
Everything's going to look like a nail.
Yeah, that's not the one I want.
No,
I want a lot of different tools in my toolbox.
Right.
I want the right tool for the right thing. And there are things in which analytics, you look at it and like, that's not the right tool.
That's right.
Some of that has to do with the mental approach, how people approach things. Bo Nix has quickly taken a lot of leadership on this team. That's not analytics. That's emotional intelligence. That's a different thing. And part of being good at understanding data is understanding where it doesn't apply.
Do you know what's interesting? Another thing I've been thinking a lot about this offseason. I would love to have a quarterback, or you could do like a middle linebacker, or a leadership metric where it's who is able to give negative feedback really well.
Yeah.
Who actually can give constructive criticism well, because I think that matters. Like, I think everyone's a system everything until they're bigger than the system, meaning they have enough reps where that's why Tom Brady not a system quarterback, but he started as a system quarterback, right? Until he became big enough to have a system that followed him. Right. So that's, to me, I'm just curious who could, and I think the best way you can do that is to be able to give I don't think people are I think in general, people are terrible at giving negative feedback.
Constructive criticism is hard to give. And I think people.
And then they read some book that's like, give a compliment for like, I really like your hat. You did a bad job at this, but I really like that hat. Like, and it's like, what does this hat have to do with anything? Like, and it's like, how do you run the route better?
On the right person, that works. But because everybody's different. Some people apply logic. Some people apply emotion, and it happens without you thinking.
But I just want to know leader-wise.
You have to understand how all these people function. Well, we talk about Nix again, and Evan Ingram talked about him. Broncos' new tight end talked about one of the things he liked is that he could get on you. He wasn't afraid to get on you about it, but he specifically mentioned, but he wasn't like screaming at you. Right. It was helpful getting on me. But it was meant to be like, hey, I didn't even notice I was doing that wrong, but I'm glad you came and let me know.
Right. And that's kind of what I mean, listen, I'm here for one practice. Let's not, I'm not getting over my skis here, but I think ultimately.
Good Colorado joke. See what you're doing.
But I think that what I saw some adjustment. I actually saw Evan Ingram ask, I don't know, a few coaches. I'm not sure. Some are interns, some are coaches. I don't know exactly. They need to wear a name tag, the coaches, so I can see who they're talking to. But ultimately he asked for a clarification on a route. And I love that because he's a veteran. Vets don't always, they like to pretend they know what they're doing, but
it's a new system for him.
But it's a new system. Sure. And then he was like, blah, 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 blah. I don't know what they were saying, but you could see them talking, and I was like, that's interesting because I wonder if Bo's good at giving negative feedback. That's what I was thinking as I was watching it, because it felt like, that can be intimidating because Evan Ingram's been in the league a lot longer than him. And, he comes in and it's one thing if it's Cortland Sutton, he's been here, he's a Bronco, whatever, like they have a outstanding relationship. It's another thing if it's day 4 of practice or whatever this is, not even a full week. And it's just, it's cool. It's cool to see.
So when you see Nix, as we pointed out, you listed him as the 8th best fantasy quarterback in the league, and let's talk about why that is. What you saw that makes you think he can leap to next year. What does the predictive science and analysis say? And also when you look at that, let's zoom out a little bit and look at it in NFL football terms, not just fantasy football terms. I don't know if he'd be ranked the 8th best quarterback overall, but I don't know if it would be much lower. He was voted for the NFL Network's top 100 by his peers. He's the 64th best player in the league, regardless of position. That's a pretty meteoric rise for a guy that after he was drafted, a couple people were looking at the Denver Broncos going, boy, they're reaching because they're desperate for a quarterback.
I mean, look, I saw someone with a tattoo that seemed to have a journalist with a tattoo that seems to have had that belief. And now he's like a Good Morning Football tattoo and Peter Schrager's not even on. Anyways, but that was wild, man. Like, good for you for paying off that debt. I don't think anyone was keeping receipts. Anyways, whatever. But long story short is, I think when you're looking at Bo Nix, let's give him 3 years with Shawn, and then we'll talk about, he's definitely top 15. It's hard to put the exact unquestionably
top half.
Is he top 10? Sure. Right around that. That feels right.
It's like at a certain point you're kind of looking at it and there's productivity, but it's like going into the Louvre and looking at this Van Gogh and this Monet, and you're like, this Monet is definitely better. Well, to you,
right, right, exactly. So, look, do I upper echelon? Yes, and a surprise. I don't know. I kind of believe Shawn Shawn's not a lying coach. There's a lot of coaches who will say something
he does too straight.
He
sometimes
tells you
too straight.
Whatever, know. And but I think that the opportunity to use more of his God-given assets this year will be even greater. Meaning they rolled him. They had some training wheels on the beginning of last season.
Definitely
training wheels. But that's good because let's throw easy passes, then let's get them a little bit harder. Then let's throw the really hard ones into traffic and look what happens against the Bengals.
29 touchdowns, 12 interceptions last year. But remembering, like you said, the training wheels. 4 of those interceptions in the first 2 games.
That's
After that, 29 and 8. And were that to be the final line, we might even be looking at Bo Nix differently. But that's kind of the way he finished the season. So what do you think is next for him?
A little bit more of a. I think that they put in the word I'm going to use is tricks, but it's not like tricks because they can't. It's tricks because he's so versatile on his legs. Shawn last year,
he seems to read it very well.
He reads it really well. So I think there'll be more designed runs. I think there'll be more, but not to the point where we're getting killed. To the point where if you see this defense doing this, just run. because it's smart.
We're not talking Lamar Jackson or anything.
No, I'm not asking him. I'm not asking him to run on every third down, right? Like I'm asking him to run when he sees this defense and they check into this coverage, just run because they're giving you whatever.
A little bit of what Patrick Mahomes maybe did at first early years in his career because he could read it, and they just said, "Look, if you don't have a safe throw, we trust you to run the ball."
Yeah. So I just think a little bit more like I still think there's still some of the training wheels. Like I don't think they're fully off. They're like still a little bit, that one training wheel you get where you wobble. But like I think we see even more. And I think we see the complexities of throwing going way up too. Like, I mean, I don't know. They're showing off for the crowd here, but they're playing perimeter games. And I don't actually think I think that's by design, right? Like, I think they want to see which one of these receivers has the chemistry builder. And I include Evan Ingram in that, has the chemistry, and some of the wide receiver or the running backs, for that matter. Let's look at some chemistry. Let's get some fun stuff. Let's like have these fun throws in practice and like, let's do it. So, I look at this and I'm like, I think that they're going to up the level of difficulty. In gymnastics, the score, the denominator changes. Last year, maybe it was everything's out of a 5. This year will be like a 7. And then I think by year 3, it'll be out of the full 10.
AFC is loaded this year. The Broncos did make the playoffs. Right behind them were the Cincinnati Bengals. We know that they've had some roster challenges, but they still do have Joe Burrow.
Roster challenges. And, that's nice of you.
I'm trying. And if he's healthy, Joe Burrow is as good as anybody in the league.
Yeah, for sure.
He's not getting clobbered. We know that Miami had some challenges as well. Some of that was injury related.
That one I have no idea.
Yeah. And
I feel so obscure. I feel like I have absolutely no idea.
They're very hard to read.
And they keep like losing corners. Like, what's going on, man? One got hurt today.
But if you're Denver, you snuck in. You were the final playoff qualifier. You want to be able to get up further. Obviously they're talking about the idea of winning the AFC West. That's great. But this stuff doesn't happen in a vacuum. You can only control winning your games. But for the Broncos, it seems like climbing is going to be tough because the teams ahead of them, maybe not Pittsburgh, but the teams ahead of them, not a lot of them are fading. The Ravens aren't going anywhere. The Bills aren't going anywhere. The Chiefs aren't going anywhere. I mean, some of these teams, they're not going anywhere. How the Broncos appear to have less room to go up than some of the teams behind them that have the opportunity to overtake them. So how do you think when this team starts the season, is a good start really important for them in this case to make sure you kind of set that level in the early going?
I don't know. They didn't have a good start last year.
No,
I mean, so every team would benefit from a good start. I don't think there's any team that's like, we're good.
Yeah,
like,
we can just go 1-3.
Who cares? We're fine.
Right.
I think every team benefits from a good start. I think what would be more important here is probably going to be down the stretch to stay healthy and to stay, and that's every team. But I don't actually, I think that this is a special team. Like you look at this team and I think one news outfit ranked it as like the most underrated team. And I'm like, okay, can we wait until after my fantasy draft so that I can get some shares of like Evan Ingram? And then
that's not the case.
And then
no way.
Just for me. But I think it's funny because like I'm not low on them, but I just think it's great. Let everyone else sleep on them. Fine by Shawn, fine by Bo, fine by every single other person on it. And I also think because no one on this team is a real like loudmouth, like they're not doing like weird things, saying weird things places. And that also, they don't give us the sound bites in the off season for people to be like, love him or hate it. Like Aaron Rodgers has annoyed the crap out of us now for 2 seasons at least. Like, first it was, are you going to retire? And now it's not, maybe it's his fault. Who knows? But like, I'm sick of talking about it, but it does it brings the Pittsburgh Steelers into your mouth more often in the middle of no man's time than, the Broncos are just
Broncos
like
have a bunch
quietly
of
good
kind of grinders. It feels like
all you guys are doing are playing golf. Like this is what you guys, your team, they're like off playing golf together and like
they're all buddies.
They're all
in the golf
God
carts.
forbid they have fun, they get along, and they're just playing golf. They're just dudes being dudes. So like I mean I love it. So let them be underrated. Only one. I'm certainly not underrating anything.
It will be obviously fun to see and exciting to see Cynthia. Obviously, besides with the game day, like with Fantasy Life, how else can people catch up with you?
Oh, so on YouTube, I've got a show called Numbers Game.
Right.
Yeah, it's a good one, and we'll have some fun, exciting new thing. I can't say yet. This is a tease, but some fun stuff coming out before ahead of.
There will be math, by the way, but it's good. It's good for you. So we'll make sure
I'll do the math. Yeah. You can steal it and pretend that it's your own.
There you go.
Fine by me. Fine by me.
Can't get a better offer than that. Cynthia Frelund, NFL Network. Thanks so much for joining us.
Oh, thanks so much for having me.
We'll be back, of course, at Broncos Camp. For everyone at My Life Sports, I'm Shawn Drotar. Thanks for watching.